Hi everybody, this is Audrey Yeager. You can find me at audreysreflection.blogspot.com. I am excited to be a guest designer again this month for my creative scrapbook, and I'm going to show you how you can get an electronic die cutting look without using an electronic machine. So I have my photos here of my kiddos having some ice cream from when we went to Florida back in February, and I've already kind of sketched out my plan for this layout because I knew I wanted to cut something out with a knife, and so I'm just flipping through my binder here where I keep my sketches and ideas, and there's my little sketch that I've made, and I wanted to work with some triangle shapes because when I was thinking about ice cream, I was thinking about ice cream cones, and I thought triangle shapes would be fun to use. So I'm just going to start with a piece of plain white cardstock. And I know that I want my photos, because of the way my kids are looking in the photos, the direction that they're looking, I wanted them on the left side of the page. And now I'm kind of just lining up my ruler and pencil and deciding where I want to put the triangles. And, oh look, I found a title. So just pulled it out of my sticker pile over there, and I think I'm going to use that because it fits perfectly with the size of my photos. So I'm just sketching out some triangles, different sizes. I'm trying to mix up big triangles and small triangles, and I always feel like I have to have like an odd number of shapes or embellishments or groups of embellishments on a page. I just think it flows better on a page. So I've drawn a couple. I don't know why this took me so long. It took me probably about 20 minutes to just draw some triangles on the page, but I wanted to make sure that they were going to be in the right spots, and you can see I've erased a couple. And finally, I'm happy with what I did, and I grabbed my little X-Acto knife and a little tiny cutting mat there, and I'm just cutting out the triangles with an X-Acto knife. They're not perfect, they're not completely symmetrical, but that's okay, and you don't even really notice it. I knew I wanted to use this piece of chevron pattern paper from the Maggie Holmes Bloom collection for the background. I wanted to use a lot of this paper, so I think I'm going to go ahead and use the paper behind all of the cones for this page. Now these scallop strips I had cut out already because I was going to use them on another page, and I didn't end up using them, but I really wanted to use them somehow, and I thought that they would make great little kind of ice cream scoops. And you can see there I tried out a piece of fringe paper too, but that didn't work. So I'm just playing around with these scallop shapes and the colors and trying to mix up the colors around the page and, you know, cutting them down to size to fit better. I put my photos back on to make sure nothing is too overwhelming. And then I stop and look at it to decide if this is really what I want to do. And I second guess myself about exactly if this is the layout that I like. So you see me take everything off, all the little scallop strips, and flip them upside down. I'm thinking about another design. I'm not sure if I like it that way, but then I just go back to my original plan and set it all back up again. So I noticed that, here I'm just testing out a couple different other papers for the cones to see if I like them or not, and I decided I didn't really like any of those other patterns, and I really just want to stick with that chevron pattern. So I noticed that the right side of my page was really heavy with paper, and it's kind of busy over there, and so I needed to balance it out on the left-hand side and on the bottom a little bit. So I just trim off a little smidge of the white cardstock, and I'm going to put, it's really hard to see because the paper I'm putting it on is a wood grain paper, and it's the exact same color as my craft mat there. But I decided that I'm going to add just a little smidge of wood grain to the left and to the bottom of my page to help balance the page. Finally, I start gluing everything down because at this point I just said, okay, I'm just going to go with it and glue it and go on to the next step. So I'm using that quick dry glue, which I love. It's my favorite glue. I have always used that glue. I've never used a tape runner. And I have like 4 bottles of it in my bag. It's my favorite. So I'm going to add some drops of ink, mist ink here. This is, I think, Anthology. It's a really pretty navy color. And you can see I hold the wand up really high in the air to get those big splatters. And then I go back over with a pink from Heidi Swapp, which is, I think it's just called Primrose. Maybe it's just called pink, but it's kind of like a bright pink. So I'm letting that dry for a minute, and then in the meantime I'm going back to cut out that wood grain paper that's going to go underneath on the bottom and the left side there. And I have that piece of fringe that I also tried to cut up for another page, and it didn't work out, and it was just kind of sitting there. And I really wanted to use it, so I am going to use it. So I love to distress the edges of my papers. Just about every page I do, I use an edge distressor. I think that's a close to my heart one. It's one of my favorite tools. So I glue that white cardstock onto that little strip of wood grain paper. And here I go back to that fringe, and I'm going to try to tuck it in the side there. Then I decide I want to also kind of rough up the edges of the scallop paper, and I had already glued it down, and I meant to do it before I glued it. So I just went over it with my fingernails and kind of scuffed up the edges a little bit just to make them have a little bit more dimension. Now I'm finally going to add the chevron print pattern paper for the cones, and I'm trying to line it up, because I'm being picky, with the points of the paper pointing down to the tip of the cone, just so it looks kind of, I didn't want to put the whole piece of paper behind it. I wanted to make sure that each cone had like a nice pattern showing. So I take some time here to go through and cut out the strips exactly as I want to put them behind the cones. Then I thought it would be fun to add even more dimension and pop that chevron paper off the back of the page. So they're not popping up, they're popping from behind. So this is the back of the layout, and I've gone through and added little 3D foam squares all around the back of the shape I cut out. And then I go back, and the papers I had cut out for behind each cone, I stick them to the back. I had peeled off all the little pieces of paper from the 3D dots, and I stick them to the back, and it just gives it a little bit more dimension. I think it's kind of cool. And I missed a lot of the dots, so I just went back through and pulled off the ones that didn't have anything stuck to them. Otherwise, it'd be collecting all the little bits of paper and getting stuck on my album. And I just trimmed this last little piece here. So going back to that little piece of fringe, I probably have stuck it in and out of that place like 5 times, and I know it's going to go there. Finally, I'm just sticking it in there and trimming it down to size. Put my photos back on, trying to decide if I want to matte them. And I decided not to go with a matte because it was already too busy, already had a lot of paper on it, and I wanted the photos to stand out a little bit, and I thought they did better without the matte, actually. Now I'm going to put that happiness sticker on. I'm using a little T-square ruler to line up my letters. And I knew that my title was going to say happiness is ice cream, because that is one of my kids' favorite things in the world. Mine too, actually. Now, for the word ice cream, I am going to cut it out of pattern paper, which I'll do here in a minute. I realized that the pink fringe wasn't good enough by itself. I had to add some of that aqua fringe in, a little bit of that from another piece of pattern paper, so I put a little snippet of that fringe on the side in there with the pink. Okay, so I'm picking my pattern paper for the words ice cream, and I decided on this wood grain print. I don't think it's the same one as the background. Maybe it is. I don't know. And I'm just roughly drawing a square of how big the title is going to be. That's why you saw me measure there. And I am just going to hand draw my letters right on the side that I want with the print that I want up. So I write out ice cream. Going to fussy cut all those out. And I'm going to erase the pencil lines. I moved my craft mat there so that you could see better, because I knew that the paper was the exact same color as the mat. So I use that gum eraser that you can see there in the shot, and that is the best eraser. Don't ever use your pencil eraser. You got to invest in one of those gum erasers. They're really good about getting off pencil lines. They don't leave a lot of like residue. It's the little pieces that come off when you erase. They're easy to kind of sweep away. So get one of those erasers. They're really good. so I'm cutting out my letters. You may have saw when I was erasing the pencil line on the letter E, I ripped it. So I just cut out another one eventually. And I just kind of freehand cut that last one. I didn't even draw it out. E's are pretty easy to cut. And it's okay if, if you try this technique, it's okay if your letters aren't perfect, because if they're all not perfect, it kind of looks like they go together and it's intentionally supposed to look like that. So, I mean, I guess you could always, like, if you really wanted to try this and get a look like this, you could always print out letters on a printer and then cut them out as well, or trace them on your pattern paper and then cut them out. Okay, so got all those letters cut out. I'm pretty happy with the size that they were. They kind of fit in there perfectly. I still haven't glued those photos down yet. It's always like one of the last things I do is glue my photos down. I make sure I have all the other layers completely glued down before I actually glue my photos down. I'm going through my little pile of stickers here because this is the last thing, almost the last thing I've made with this kit. I made 2 other layouts and a card already, and I want to use them up. So I'm just trying to find different places where I can embellish. I love those little phrase stickers that just have different phrases. I think that one says "Wonderful Day." I'm not sure. I'm kind of looking at this piece of pattern paper to see if I can find, I always like to put the date on my layouts to see if I can find a little date sticker or something that says date. And I didn't find it on the cutout, so I eventually just grabbed one from my stash that I have printed out from somewhere online and put it right behind that photo there. I have the Puffy frame and that little heart circle, which that yellow heart to the left of my daughter's photo there really helps balance out the yellow on the right side of the page from the yellow scallop paper. Gluing my letters down with my glue. And then I went and stitched over the cones. And here I'm just trimming up the thread. I stitched right across the bottom of the scallops with some pink thread. And I also stitched over on the left-hand side where that little fringe is, just because I wanted that fringe to stay secure in there. And when I did that stitching, it really was cool because obviously, remember I had popped that chevron paper from the back of the page? Well, where I stitched it, it obviously pulled it closer to the page. So now it looks like the cones, it's kind of hard to explain and see in this video, but you might be able to see it in the close-up. So the cones are popped off the back as you go towards the bottom of the cone. It came out kind of cool. Again, I went back to my little stash of stickers here. I love these little plus signs. That seems to be a popular design now, or shape, are these plus signs. So I had a couple of those and just scattered them on the page. I thought they were fun. And I'm pretty much done. Going to stick those down. Journaling, I said the photos is the last thing I glue, but journaling is really the last thing I do. And I never, unless it's really important or I have a really long story to tell, I never really pre-plan my journaling. I just kind of think about what I want to say and then start writing it. And sometimes that's not good because I either have more to say or not enough to say to fit in the space that I'm writing in, and I hate that, but oh well. I did draw some lines to help guide me, and I went in with a white pen, by the way, and I filled in the R and the A and the word cream because I didn't cut those little tiny pieces out, so I just filled them in with a white pen. So finishing up my journaling, I'm talking about this ice cream and how messy it is in my kids and how the colors were disgusting. It was called Superman ice cream or something. Anyway, here's the finished page. Couple close-ups. It was pretty fun to make, I have to say. Something different. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed, and check me out at audreysreflection.blogspot.com.